Good evening and welcome once again to Face the Nation, Monday 9:30 p.m. right here on TV01. When a mistake happens for the very first time, it becomes an incident. When the same mistake is repeated twice or more, it becomes a trend. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the central bank bond controversy here in Sri Lanka. On the 27th of February 2015, the first incident took place as far as the central bank bond issues were concerned. And then again, there was a mistake again. That was this year, March 2016. Where is the country really heading? What happens to your money? You voted in a good government. You voted in a government which you said that will establish good governance in the country. On the 8th of January 2015, you went to the polling booth and cast your vote to appoint a new president. On the 17th of August last year, you went again to the polling booth and appointed a coalition government. Are they fulfilling what they pledged, they promised? A big question mark in the hearts and minds of the public in the country. Today we are doing Face the Nation a bit differently. Let's take a listen to the statement that was given by the governor of the central bank. I had a chat with him over the phone on the 16th of March 2016, and this is what Arjuna Mahendran, the high-spending governor of the central bank, had to say.
Mr. Governor, now on the 26th,
Yes.
when you want to increase it up to 10 billion,
Yes.
was this communicated to the primary dealers?
This was not. So basically, we advertised 1 billion and the public debt department told me they would get something in the order of 1.5 billion. And when they informed me at that day that they had got 20 billion worth of orders, I then told them that, the government had indicated to me that they needed a large amount of money. And I told them, why don't we take half of that, 10 billion? And accordingly, the tender committee then went and chose, the lowest bids that they could get to generate that 10 billion.
But the problem right now, Mr. Governor, is the fact that this was not communicated to the primary dealers.
Well, it's in the past it wasn't either. The point is, how can we communicate that to primary dealers? Because we didn't know that we would get 20 billion worth of orders. The moment we opened the bids, we realized that there was much in excess of what we had originally anticipated in the auction.
But every time, Mr. Governor, there has been a treasury bond issue, there has been oversubscription, right?
Yes, but the point is, we don't. My point is the knowledge that I had that the government needed the money was in the back of my mind, and my expectation was that we wouldn't have many bids at this auction, so we were going to look at other means of raising it.
So, Mr. Governor, there is a problem that persists with regard to the communication.
I agree. I mean, it's because the functioning of the market has not been perfect in the past. Now, in this instance, I think that communication didn't work properly. We should have said we needed to raise 10 billion, but of course, we had advertised it the previous day, and I only got to know of the treasury requirement on the Thursday. So there was miscommunication. I accept that.
So can this be called insider trading, Mr. Governor?
No, this is not insider trading at all, because, it was just a question of us shifting from one system to another.
One organization in question was privy to information that the others did not have.
No, that has to be established. Certainly that information didn't come from me.
Mr. Governor, many primary dealers have told newspapers on the grounds of anonymity that this has caused a confusion and instability in the market. And I think as a governor, you should take responsibility for it.
No, I mean, I will take responsibility for the fact that we should have advertised 10 billion, but we didn't have that information in time.
A conversation I had with the governor of the central bank on the 16th of March 2015, he admits that he did not inform the primary dealers about the increase of the bond issue from 1 billion to 10 billion. However, he still remains to be the governor of the central bank. Who should be held responsible? The governor's term comes to an end on the 30th of June 2016. Will he be reappointed? Our topic of discussion today revolves around the central bank bond scam and economic governance in the country. Joining us this evening are Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. A very good evening, sir, and welcome to the show. Joining us for the first time on Face the Nation. Nice to have you on board. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Gomind Asri, attorney at law. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Also joining us this evening is Mr. Kirti Tendakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Also joining us this evening is Rusiripal Tendakon, who was the former chairman of the Bank of Ceylon and also joining us this evening as a former senior banker. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Let's start off with Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Jayaratna, what has the government done right over the last 1.5 years? Your time starts now.
Well, that's a good question that I think all of us should focus on, because we, the public of this country, appointed good men and women, we thought, at both elections. We thought they were committed to transparency, good governance and anti-corruption. We thought there was a capable team with correct policies and a correct long-term vision. Some of them only were good men and women when they were, after they were elected, we saw. But the government was committed to democracy, equity, justice, rule of law, and we expected them to effectively and with their capability manage public finances of this country for the long term. But the question you asked earlier comes to my mind: what have they done? And also specifically in this bond game, why did they repeat it twice? Surely once could have been a mistake. The second time is even worse than the first when you account and look at some of the issues that are underneath what is not seen even by us officially. But the question arises, the promises they gave the people at the 100 days, most of them still remain to be adopted. RTI is only this week coming in. Audit Act has not come in. Code of Conduct for public services people have not come. They had some very good ideas, like the fertilizer subsidy to be managed better for effective use and benefit of the country and without hurting the farmers. They had a similar intent with the school uniforms, both of which they couldn't get right. ETCA, I think, is a good thing and needed in my books for this country's future, relations of trading and development, and so is the Indian fisheries issue must be solved if we are going to have reconciliation and facilities for our people. But all of these still remain issues. Whilst the central bank issue remains on one side, we also see the issues of corruption, issues of ineffective management, and above all, something that really hurts us. Where this particular bond issue started with an announcement by the Prime Minister in the Parliament. Mr. Tendakon, I'm sure, will deal more with it. Nobody questioned it, wasn't debated, intellectuals didn't have a chance, it is implemented. It makes a mistake once, costs the country billions, and it's continued. And some ministers ask, well, concepts of good governance as far as conflicts of interest and related party are private sector concepts. Now, all this goes to show that these people whom we elected seem to be batting on a wicket different to which we expected them to bat.
Ms. Jayaratna, you're an individual who campaigned for good governance. Are you satisfied the way in which the government has progressed? Or have they slid back during the last 1.5 years?
They have slid back quite a bit. Whether it be on the UNHRC resolution and whether it be on the bond scam, or even with Megapolis or the Strategic Development Act and the BOI amendment, which we haven't seen any debate. Good governance starts with transparency. We expected green white papers to come, people to be consulted. And now the most dangerous thing is announcement has happened that within 2 months we are going to have our capital account opened. Few weeks ago or few months ago, the finance minister waved the hands that anybody with black money can come to this country. I don't know where we are headed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. I now move my attention to Mr. Kirti Tendakode, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Tendakode, you went to courts today requesting for a writ petition. Tell us a little bit about this petition that you filed at the Court of Appeal.
Thank you. And we were very closely watching what is happening in Sri Lanka for last 15-16 months, especially just after the first treasury bond issue has come out. And the Anti-Corruption Front is the first organization who openly questioned the issue of the first treasury bond issue. And we didn't managed to get a very perfect answer from any of these players, especially from the politicians, and we looked for the central bank to explain it, and they came up with very funny explanations like we played just beginning of this program. And then the controversy dragged on, and more controversies came when the COP started its inquiry, and when we just looked on and we just tried to find out what exactly is happening. And then the Bribery and Corruption Commission stepped into this issue, and they had a very lengthy investigation process, which to most of these people thought will end up in a very strong position. But now we know that the Bribery Commission report even does not come out yet, and then the Attorney General's Department started investigation, which ended up with something like 1 and 6 weeks of course with the Attorney General's cupboard now. And then the Dinesh Gunwal, the Dev Gunasekara's COP report, the interim report, which ends up the parliamentary session in a way. And then the Prime Minister's statement came out that the first, the business of the new parliament will be appointing COP, and there will be a proper investigation on the bond scam. And we just looked and waited to get a very correct answer, which is not happening at the moment, and it didn't happen. Then all of a sudden, once again, the same exercise repeats in a much bigger scale, which cost something like at least 2.3 billion Sri Lankan rupees.
If you look at the figures properly, giving 1% profit to perpetual treasuries, the amount goes up to over 2.5 billion rupees.
Definitely, yes. It could go much further high for that matter. Whatever it is, the government, the good governance principles has not protected. And we were just sort of to figure out where we are heading. In the other hand, to sort out in a decent manner, in a transparent manner, in a way which these sort of exercises will not repeat again and again, which benefits some selected people. So these white collar crimes in this nature cannot take place in this country, and we have seen there are so many people who's robbing this treasury and this country, taking huge amount of wealth out of this country. Now this dialogue has happened for such a long time, and we didn't see that the law enforcement, the natural law has not taken in this case. So finally we didn't have any other choice after our failed discussions with the Prime Minister and the President last week. We know that this President, the Central Bank Governor, is not a Sri Lankan by his decency, and now he is a Singaporean citizen who cannot give the oath under the Constitution, section 165 of the Sri Lankan Constitution, and he has involved with 2 bond scams, and he has abused immensely the powers of the Central Bank Governor. And moreover, last week we saw the cabinet is giving approval for a huge loan to get out from 5 banks, and we got to know that the Swiss Credit Suisse is one of the companies who was rigged up from the backside of this total issue, and we know now that the man behind that is Arjun Mahendran, and with all this evidence in our hand, there's no other way. We just look for the justice at the Supreme Court, the justice with the appeal court.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Tendakon. Before I move on my attention to Mr. Risipal Tendakon, a question to you, Mr. Tendakon. Why did you wait for 2.5 months? You said that your organization was closely monitoring the bond market. This happened for the second time in March. You all waited for 2.5 months to go.
We knew that from the very beginning. The Prime Minister is not ready.
Why? What's the reason?
He had a very strong relationship with this governor. The Prime Minister did not want to disturb that relationship, and we knew that from the very beginning it is
Why
not
were you
going to
concerned
happen.
about this relationship? Why were you concerned about this relationship?
Because it has shown from the very beginning, when this Arjuna Mahendran was appointed as the governor, when its name was proposed, everyone's memory was going back to 2002. And then in 2004, how he left the BOI.
You're not answering my question. My question is, why was your organization concerned about the relationship that the governor and the
this
Prime Minister
government, I mean, main pledge made by this government on January 8 is that transparency, good governance. That good governance principles have not prevailed, and that's the point. The anti-corruption looked into this matter very seriously.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Tendakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for Free and Fair Election. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Tendakon, former chairman of the Bank of Ceylon and also joining us this evening as a senior banker. Mr. Tendakon, the Puravasi Balaya movement made a very interesting remark yesterday. The organization said that the Prime Minister has agreed not to reappoint Arjuna Mahendran as the governor of the central bank until investigations are concluded. Now, you just listened to the governor of the central bank a short while ago admitting to the mistake that he committed. What more does the Prime Minister really want? The time starts now.
Yes. I think the statement that was made by the participants at this discussion with the Prime Minister, strangely, after a lengthy discussion the same organizations had with the President and the Prime Minister together, this was a meeting that has been held only with the Prime Minister, and it is very strange how the Prime Minister has given a new dimension to the whole issue. Now, the question, the big question we have before us is, I don't know, the people who made a statement after the meeting with the Prime Minister, from what they said, we gathered that the governor is to be sent on leave and an inquiry will be conducted, and after the inquiry, if he is free, he will be appointed. Now, there are so many questions that come to us. What is this leave issue? Now, how is he to be sent on leave? His term, as all of us know, which is a temporary term to fill in the vacancy that was created by his predecessor, terminates on the 30th of June, that is this month. Only few days to go. Now, what is this question of sending him on leave at this stage and conducting an inquiry? Is it a new thing? What is the Prime Minister really aiming at if he has made a statement like that? I would like to invite your attention to the legal situation with regard to this appointment of the governor of the central bank. The Monetary Law Act, which governs the appointment of the governor of the central bank, says in very simple terms, the governor of the central bank shall be appointed by the President on the recommendation of the minister in charge of the subject of finance. Now we come up with the first issue, that is, who is the minister in charge of the subject of finance? The minister in charge of economic affairs, who has taken over the function of the central bank, the portfolio of the central bank, after the segregation of functions and tasks belonging to ministries, is the Prime Minister. But the Minister of Finance, as far as this country knows, legally, who presents the budget is another minister. Now, who is the one who made the recommendation to appoint this governor to the President? A question. Then, the next issue is, the term of office of the governor runs for 6 years, and he has to be appointed for a period of 6 years. This person is filling a vacancy, therefore for that reason his period was very short, and that terminates on the 30th of June. Now, a very interesting thing in this Monetary Act, when it was first formed by Exeter, it was there he says, the man who compiled this says, the first governor shall serve a period of not exceeding only 3 years. Why? Because he had only 3 more years ahead of him. That was the quality of people we had. He being the person who created this, the creator, he could have very well extended a point for him to carry on for 6 years. But that is not the type of people we had in the caliber of the governor of this country. So, now the third situation, the most important thing is, in the event of the vacation of office of by the governor or by the appointed member before the expiration of the period, for that period somebody can be appointed. Then, very interesting situation we are coming across. I am running a little out of time, but I would.
I'll give 30 more seconds.
Please give me a few more seconds, because
yes,
you can take it from my next turn. The most relevant thing in the context of what the Prime Minister is supposed to have stated is this. In the event of the temporary absence from duty of the governor of this, or of the temporary inability of the governor to perform his functions and duties, the deputy governor designated as senior by the monetary board shall act as the chief executive officer of the central bank. Now, for this part of the act to take effect, I think an eminent lawyer with us who is going to follow now will explain this situation. Now, according to, for this part of the section of the Monetary Board Act to take effect, there should be a governor. In the absence of a governor, if he is unable to attend to his duties, the deputy governor can be appointed as the CEO. Now, does it mean that after the 30th of June, that this person needs to be reappointed as the governor, so that when he is sent on leave to fill that vacancy, somebody will be elected to that position? Very dangerous situation. The whole country should look at this. This is a very big diversion of all the ideas and the expressions, the opinions expressed so far about this. This person has a prima facie case against him, established, accepted by the Prime Minister himself by stating that he should be inquired into, which means he has a prima facie. So, nevertheless, the talk is that he will be reappointed. If what he said, what is reported as told by him is correct, what he is going to do is to appoint him and to send him on leave. The country should be aware of this very dangerous situation, which is completely a negation of the uprise and the versions that the whole country has been expressing on this issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusirpal Thanakul. I now move my attention to Mr. Gomindasri, Senior Attorney at Law. Mr. Dasri, last year we saw a 3-member committee being appointed by the Prime Minister. And he said this is an independent commission, and mentioned the 3 UNP lawyers who were attached to the commission in question. And Mr. W. Vijayawardena was serving as an advisor. He revealed on the very same show on Face the Nation that he was serving as an advisor to this committee in question. And now he says again, according to the Pro-Asibale movement, that another committee is to be appointed and the governor is to be re-investigated. How credible is this statement made by the Prime Minister? Is he saying that the first committee that he was appointed did not do their job and hence he's appointing another committee 9 months after? What does it really mean?
I mean, this comic interlude, Shamil, I think I'm wasting my breath on it. We are talking far too much on this comedy of errors. To me, there's only one thing. All that has been said, spoken today in the media and elsewhere, there's only one thing that Arjuna Mahendra has to do if he has even a grave of self-respect. He should resign or he should refuse to accept when he is reappointed. As far as the Prime Minister is concerned, I think if he had been a friend of his time is up, his period of is over. He should accept it without extending it. I think this to me, I see a much larger picture emerging. And that is what is frightening. And if I may dwell on that. Yes. Because to me, what is important is public perception, Shamil, public perception, and I heard it. On my right is a very eminent person whom I used to go to school with, Chandra Jairat. I have great respect for him because at all times he was a fighter. But today I heard him say, I expected when this government came that we are in for better times, of course, because the last government was so ridiculous. But remember this, the last government scored a major victory, something I think we as Sri Lankans can say we used to look at a history and be proud of, but now we can look at ourselves, the present times, and be proud of because we eliminated terrorism. That is the glory of the last government. Last government means up to 2005. It's from 2005 when the sycophants made all these Maharaja Tumani kind of concept, built billboards, hardboards. The president appeared larger than life. Then we had a royal family. With that, the system began to zag, and that was what really caused the downfall, because law and order, transparency, good governance, equality, all those things went out of the picture. So that was the reason why this government was elected, but there was yet another plus for the last government, which was the last remaining straw. Undoubtedly, urban development took place. There was development, visible development, as against a different matter, taking of loans, financial management, financial
development at the cost of corruption.
Corruption, immense corruption. Now,
this is not what the public wanted, and that is why they voted against. That is precisely why they voted, and I think they voted rightly, quite correctly. But that's where I said public perception comes. They had high expectations that this government will deliver. But as Chandra himself made that colossal error, if you look at the track record of most of the people who are coming from this government, when you look at the people who were defeated by at the last general elections from the SLFP, they are cabinet ministers. But FCID is not going after them. There's a different crowd of people whom the FCID is pursuing. So what is this nonsense that is going? To me, what matters is not what is happening, but what is the future of our country? What is the future for our next generation? What is there for our children? What is this? I mean, you can, after 5 years, you can blame this government and elect the last government back into power. What are they going to do? Is there anybody? You have the same old names. You will find on the last minute, some of the cabinet ministers jump in sides. That is what Ronnie Rimmel always did. Last minute he used to jump, because he then doesn't have to face any kind of disqualification. So you know, in picture is Arjuna Mahendra is a small keg, irrelevant. I mean, he is part of this decadence. But what is shocking to me, what is the future for us? What is this country, where is this country heading? I mean, do we have new leaders? Do we have an emerging generation? Exactly. On the 27th of February, just 1.5 months after the new government was elected to power, there was corruption. We're talking about people's money at the end of the day. People want to know what happened to their money. This money is being used very badly at the EPF. They're using this money. People are being taxed because of these reasons. And you are saying this is a very small, minor issue.
It
Why
is a
that?
minor issue because if you look at the total picture, it's much worse. Where do you see any education, transport? Do you see any progress at all?
But this is not why. This is not why, Mr. Dayasri, that people appointed a new government. They wanted a corruption-free government. That was what was running in their mind. Good governance was what was
so
promised.
that is precisely what I'm saying. When you looked at the EPF funds, what was it used by the last government? Did they use it prudently to buy shares? Are they doing it today, presently? So our problem is, Shamir, both these governments, both these groups of people in power are equally decadent. But what are we going to do next time? We will throw them out and bring the old guard back again. And we face the music, things become from bad to worse. And is this going on? Where is new leadership? Where are the youth? Where are the young people? Where are the people, technocrats? What are they doing? Why are they taking a back seat?
Thank you very much.
My concerns are really Arjuna Mahendra is part of these operations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomin Dayasri.
Thank you.
Before I open the floor for questions from our journalist, Ms. Jayaratna, you could respond to, if you wish to respond to Mr. Gomin Dayasri on his statement. He referred to you and said that you made an error. If you want to respond, I can give you 30 seconds to do so.
Well, yes, I think I made a mistake in voting some of these people whom I thought. I cast my vote for 3 good people I thought. They haven't delivered. So I like to just dwell on one more fact about development of technocrats. I think that is a very important factor. Today, I have great respect for the 2 people who run the Prime Minister's office. Whatever the other conditions are, or whatever people's perceptions are, I have great respect for Mr. Bhaskaralingam and Mr. Charitha Ratprathy, ability to get things done. Now, after all these years, if the Prime Minister's office has to be run by these 2 gentlemen, where are we headed? Where are the technocrats to take this place? I think Gomin has hit a very important thing. The technocrats who are there appear to be those whom the Prime Minister is comfortable working with. But that might not be in the best interest of this country's future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jayaratna.
Please.
I
think where are the youth? I mean, Chandra is, and we are elderly people. We are spending our last days, but we are still able to present a point of view. Where are the people? Where are the young people?
Mr. Dayasri, I have to open the floor for questions from our journalist. But before that, I want to remind our viewers, we did invite Mr. Arjuna Mahendran, the governor of the central bank, to attend today's Face the Nation. His response was, I do not attend talk shows. We also invited Arjun Aloysius, the son-in-law of the governor of the central bank, who is amidst of all this controversy. He said he does not attend talk shows as well. However, they have all the right in the world to do whatever they wish with the people's money. I open the floor for questions from our journalist. Onto my right is Nadim Majid, as usual. Thank you very much, Nadim, for joining us. Onto my left is Faraz Shaukat Ali. Didn't have him on the show for the last 2 weeks, and back again. Thank you very much, Faraz. Also joining us this evening is Chaturanga Hapararachi. Let's start the flow with Faraz.
Thank you, Shamir. This question is to Mr. Chandra Jayaratna. Mr. Jayaratna, what is of greater significance? Is it the apparent breach of the laws that govern the central bank, or is it the obvious breach of public perception in terms of good governance?
I think it's all. I will, now that you've given me the opening, I would take a couple of other things with the central bank. Central bank has been making losses. It made losses in 2013 and 2012. 2013 and 14. And 2015 it made losses, and from what we see, the first few months also is a loss this year. Now the losses are such that the capital of the bank is under threat. Now the position taken up by the governor publicly in statements is that this does not matter. The government will bail us out if there is a shortfall. Now, I don't know if the government has not been able to find money for essentials, including the disaster recovery and things, where they are going to find the money. That's one thing. Secondly, they also take a position that these are book losses. When the gold goes up in price, we will make up for it. Now, international financial IFRS financial standards were prepared to make sure that you account for the books on a date in a certain principle. Now, he says it's not applicable to the central bank. So, does it mean that the central bank, who is the bank of last resort to all the bankers, can run losses that they can't figure out how to help when the banks are in trouble? Second thing, the entrust, a public finance company is supposed to have gone, management has been taken by the central bank. Now, I don't know, central bank's own balance sheet at 2015 end has some peculiar entries. Uncollateralized repos, nearly 2.2 billion in the regional banks, or 1.8 billion in the regional banks, and 483 million, I think, in the pension fund and in the medical fund of the institution. So that's about 2.2 billion has been uncollateralized. Now, this is how the audit has disclosed it. Now, a repo cannot be uncollateralized. If a repo is not collateralized, it is not a repo. Now, if such a document comes from the central bank, I don't know what is transparency. If it relates to an institution whose money has vanished, be open, tell that has gone. Who's going to pay for this? If it has gone and it cannot be recovered, it is the people of this country who have to pay for it. Now, I therefore say all your questions, no, it's not either this or that, it is this, that and many more things, including what has happened to the golden key. No action there also.
But we have a governor of the central bank who's had a rather stellar career in banking, and he's been imported from Singapore.
Well, he's my friend. I have known him for a long time, but performance is what I'm talking about in Sri Lanka. I don't know what he has done abroad.
As his friend, have you spoken to him and expressed your concerns?
I don't think he wishes to speak to me after what I've been writing to him. He has not agreed with anything.
But he's your friend.
Is he answering your letters?
Well, he has sent only one letter we sent to him. He has replied, but other things he gets somebody else.
He's not a friend anymore.
But basically, friend or not,
You are very lucky.
you have to do what is right. If the transparency is what he has joined the government. He has taken a position within a vision of a government. If he is not a part of that vision, and if he cannot deliver the vision and the commitments of good governance, transparency, and even risks of, has he declared his related party transactions? Every time that he walks in there and talks about that meeting, you asked him, the first question to ask him is, did he declare his conflicts of interest and related party before he said, take the 10 billion?
I think I beg to differ with you. I think the first question that ought to have been asked from him has been raised by Mr. Kirti Tennakoon in his application in the Court of Appeal. And that is that he couldn't possibly have taken his oath of allegiance because his allegiance is to the state of Singapore.
Well, that I agree.
Mr. Tennakoon, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and ask you a few questions. CAFE is an election monitor. What is your interest in the issue of the central bank governor?
We were fighting for a very long time with good governance, especially on the transparency of the government. And treasury is something which comes into the very categoric importance in that sense.
But the country is also facing another major issue in terms of elections. Essential public services are in shambles because local government councils have not been elected. And those elections that were supposed to be held. What is CAFE doing about this? Because that is in your direct mandate. The treasury maybe you're out of interest for good governance, but local government elections are in your direct mandate.
And our direct mandate is continuously playing in a very big role in this context. And when the local council elections was postponed, especially 4 years ago when it comes to the Pudukkodirupu and Maritime Pattu elections were postponed, we were continuously raising this issue, and still it was not managed with the provincial council and local council ministry, and the new political parties cannot be registered and all that. Now the delimitation issue is down there more
I want to,
importantly.
Mr. Senator, I just want to interrupt you for a second here. Focus your attention on the bond issue and economic governance.
Well,
Nabil.
I'm trying to establish CAFE's position here because there are so many players in this, but there are so many issues.
No, I am just, don't forget that I am the advisor to the anti-corruption front, and this anti-corruption front was the leading organization who talked about this treasury bond issue continuously. From the day one we start speaking, when these numbers came out, everyone knew that there was a conflict of interest. Then the fourth day we knew from the first treasury bond issue that something has gone wrong with the figures, and then the more numbers came out, so we expose it, and we are the main complainer on that.
Thank you, Mr. Tennecool. Mr. Dayasri, I want to bring you in on this conversation as well. We have a committee on high posts in Parliament that deals with the appointment of people to senior positions. One of the primary promises that the government made was to amend the standing orders in the 100-day program, was to amend the standing orders of Parliament to give these committees, these oversight committees, more power. Instead, we have now, there's a commission for appointments to higher posts that has been set up outside of Parliament, whereas Parliament is the place where the people's sovereignty is exercised. What's going on here? Why is it that these appointments that are made are not being run through the proper channels, the proper procedures?
Nasim, don't you think that it's a question of appointing more and more people rather than getting the best people into the right places? I think that's the issue. Because look at it, we have had these parliamentary select committees, and look at the diplomats who have been appointed. Look at the, I think people
Mr.
have
Dayasri,
lost
the reason that I asked this question is with regard to this bond issue and the governor of the central bank. Now we've had the governor of the central bank come in. The Prime Minister has accused the former governor of the central bank of getting up to dirty tricks as well. The reason I asked this question is, do we have a mechanism in place to ensure that the person who is appointed as the next governor of the central bank will also not be up to the same?
I don't think, because if my recollection is correct, I think even the Constitutional Council who has to make appointments doesn't have the governor in that agenda, in that list. I don't think he's there. My friend says he's certainly not there. Now that's a serious business. But what is very material is, look at our past record. We have had some of the most eminent people as governors. There was Sunil Mendis, there was the former customs Disanayak, there was Arthur Ranasinghe, there was Tennakoon, Rasaputram, Rajapatirana. Were there any such questions ever asked? Was there select committees? Were there all these people monitoring?
Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon, this question is over to you because time is quickly running out now. We had the Minister of Finance here on the same platform last week. He said that the losses that were incurred as a result of the previous regime have to be borne by the people of the country. Now, as a result of this bond issue, will there be a day that we will be discussing that the loss will be again on the people?
Obviously, this has to come up one day or the other, because nobody can bury this. The loss is so huge and so big, so incomparative. This will definitely come up. And you know, we are all talking about the bond issue of the 27th of February.
Let me follow up.
Yes.
When that issue comes up someday,
yes,
we'll hope it's in the near future, but when it comes up, will the current governor of the central bank, who is a Singaporean citizen, will be back in Singapore enjoying his citizenship there? Will he be accountable to the legal authorities here?
That depends. If you want to hold him responsible, might as well suggest that he will be reappointed. So that he is here for the next 6 years.
Mr. Tennakoon, the finance minister also said that these losses were notional.
Absolute rubbish, I should say. I'm sorry to use that word, because he, as the Minister of Finance, should have known exactly what transpired in the bond issue.
But the central bank doesn't come under him.
No, it doesn't. He doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be that the central bank comes under him to know this. If the public, as members of the public, if we know this, why shouldn't the Minister of Finance in this country know or not know what really transpired there? It is running into an amount, a loss to the state, to the government, to the central bank, running into billions. A bond that the government expected to sell at and was able to sell at 119 rupees was sold at 90 rupees. That is a simple arithmetic of it. And if that arithmetic is not understood by the finance minister of this country, God save the king.
Mr. Tennekon, Mr. Kirti Tennekon, this bond issue, has it come to a stage where the power of the president and the power of the prime minister are in the balance? Does this mean that the reappointment would in some way undermine the power of the president or in some way undermine the president or the prime minister? Has it become a strictly, highly political issue?
It's a political issue in a way, but here in this case the president is having all the powers to get the right person on the right place. The issue here, the prime minister is playing around and not answering direct questions raised to him, and we have experienced, as Mr. Rusripal Tennekon very correctly said, when we met the president and the prime minister together, he didn't even mention Arjuna and Mahendran's name. He didn't even spoke about the central bank or the monetary board for that matter. When we continued to talk about, raise the issue of the central bank and the Arjuna Mahendran, finally he said, myself and the president, we will talk about.
So you are of the opinion that the prime minister is protecting the governance?
Definitely, throughout that particular meeting, we have experienced how hard he tried to protect the central bank governor. And not talking anything about any questions we raised to the prime minister, not answering any of these questions, is a very concrete way, very manipulated way he tried to do it. On the other hand, now everyone is talking about, the Rajapaksa regime is coming and might come into power if this particular issue, as this governance, the relationship between the prime minister and the president is disturbed. I cannot understand why we can play, a whole nation can play in such a manner, threatening the people, making afraid the people in such a manner to address this issue, blackmailing. This is blackmailing definitely, of course. We are talking about principles. We are talking about the very big principle, the very talk about principle which made on January 8th and nothing else. But the corruption, if it is under Rajapaksa regime, only we are going to talk about, we are having a very big mistake.
But Mr. Tennekon, yesterday the co-convener of the Purawasi Balaya movement came forward and said the Prime Minister agreed not to reappoint the governor of the central bank until the investigations.
This is the first time I am going to talk about the Saman Ratnapriya's comment on this particular issue. It was very the Saman Ratnapriya talked about from Salavar to the floods. He talked about vehicles, he talked about VAT and everything, but he didn't speak a word when the Prime Minister were down there on the treasury bond issue or the Arjuna Mahendra. So then thereafter, he had a private discussion with the Prime Minister and came out of this funny explanation, and it is a well-planned thing, and we know where this well-planned thing is now heading.
Before I quickly move on to Mr. Jayaratna, let me ask you as a final question, do you think that the civil societies also are using this bond controversy to maybe fuel themselves into media, into other forms of publicity? Do you think so?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but here the issue, we are having a very clear division. The people who supporting the Prime Minister, some of the civil society people are supporting the President, and some of the very organized civil societies who try to stick the balance and stick into the principles.
Thank you very much.
One last question from...
Okay, one last question. I'm going to give one last question for Chaturanga, and then I'm going to come back to you for us in a minute. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jayaratna, now we were speaking of even Mr. Kirti Tennekon pointed out that you had exchanged letters with the governor of the central bank. You were writing letters to the president, the prime minister, the minister of finance with regard to this issue over and over again. We in fact published, telecast a few letters that you had written to them. Have you at any point received a response, a possible positive, a negative response with regard to this at any point?
The governor, I wrote my personal letter to the governor was responded, and so were all the others were to the monetary board. They were all responded, firstly saying that the information cannot be given under many reasons.
Very generic, very general.
Yeah. Governor's reply is that he was cleared. He is maintaining that he was cleared by the Supreme Court, though he said what he said was incorrect. He is quoting, he has sent his position. But today I had a letter from the Labour Minister to whom I wrote, asking the Commissioner of Labour to institute an inquiry to see whether the Provident Fund has lost any malpractice has taken place within the investments of the Provident EPF in the bond market, and to do an inquiry.
Mr. Jairatna, you said something very interesting. You said that the governor had said that he was cleared by the Supreme Court. However, it was you who went to courts and filed the petition in question. What exactly happened? What exactly transpired?
Yeah, our petition said, look into what has happened in the bond issue, and make an order to look at systems, procedures and compliances that are necessary to prevent it happening again. But the governor in legal terms, in a reply, maybe Gomin might be able to explain it better, takes a position that when we say look into the charge of something as having gone wrong, that he says when we were not allowed to go, though the Supreme Court only said that there is no legal basis to proceed. They say that the legal basis not to proceed comes out of the fact that they inquired it. This is what he writes. Honorable Chief Justice and the other judges of the Supreme Court decided that after giving these inverted commas from the judgment, after giving deep consideration to the rival submissions of counsel who appeared for all parties, court does not see any legally permissible grounds on which leave to proceed can be granted. So it's only a narrow window of whether there is legal provision is what he says.
The governor was not cleared from
that's
the
our
bond.
view, but he takes a view, obviously a letter drafted by his lawyers, saying that when they inquired into it, the petition, and said this, that he has been cleared.
So the politicians are taking a political mileage over this.
Well, he not only said that in the newspapers, as I saw, he said he and his dependents were cleared. I don't know where the dependents comes in.
Mr. Jairatna, just in response to what you've just been saying, if you compare the Supreme Court action and orders made in terms of the tragic Greek bonds, in that instance the Supreme Court actually went into the workings of the central bank's actions in the purchase of these very tragic, as it turned out to be, Greek bonds. So in your application they did not go into it in any form or other because they didn't give you leave to proceed.
Can I refrain from it? I have a legal reason not to
you could do so.
Talk about what you
thank you. I'm just going to ask the question from Mr. Dasri then. Mr. Dasri, what on earth is the Prime Minister of our country doing coming to the defense of a public official, in this case the Governor of the Central Bank?
That's a question I think I'll have to dwell a little on, because I do not think, knowing the Prime Minister, that he's doing it purely to defend Mr. Mahendran. I think there's a large issue. Remember, he is not a candidate at this election or previous election. The UNP, I do not know whether they have the confidence in voting him as the Prime Minister or as the top dog in Sri Lankan politics. He has come through the back door. Now what is happening is, President Sirisena has advised him to be very cautious in making this appointment. Now, I feel that this is really a case where he wants to show the people of Sri Lanka, I am the boss, mama tamai lokka. That's the reason. He wants to show his party men, he wants to show the UNP parliamentarians, the ministers, that he's in control, because this is a queer, peculiar government. There's the SLFP, UNP combined, they are trying to work in harmony, but he wants to clearly show, in this team, I am the number one. I am the captain or the non-playing captain. So I feel the issue is much larger. This is really a case where he is psychologically trying to assert himself, because I think back of his mind he feels that he has certainly overcome some of the challenges, like some of the errant rebel MPs are falling in line with him, and he thinks that because now he is in power, that he can use that power, assert himself and falsely hold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dashri.
Just one last thing, I think he's using this Arjuna Mahinda incident to project himself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dashri, for your thoughts. What I gathered from the first two rounds is the fact that Mr. Chandra Jayaratna brought in. He said that friends or not, you have to do the right thing. It's all about your conscience. We're going for a short commercial break and then we start the third round. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around the central bank bond scam and economic governance. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon, who is a senior banker, former chairman of Bank of Ceylon as well. Mr. Tennakon, when the first incident took place, that was on the 27th of February, many ministers, deputy ministers criticized the action. However, subsequent to the second bond scam that took place this year, many deputy ministers who said it was all wrong are now somewhat backing the governor. Why?
But if I remember correct, Shamir, the first bond issue, there was a cabinet minister who went to the bribery commission. I think it was Mr. Amaraveera. He went to the bribery commission with a complaint. No one knows up to date the outcome of that report, but we are aware that the central bankers were questioned, their telecommunication footages were even recorded by the CID, and statements were taken from all concerned in that bond issue, and we thought that it will manifest into some form of a report and then it will come out. It never happened. The second bond issue has to date not become an issue in this country. Nobody has made a complaint per se about that bond issue. That is to the best of my knowledge. We are talking about it. What has transpired in the second bond issue seems to be much more serious and severe than the first one. The events that are reported has been unfolded are that on the 29th of March 2016, a bond for the value of 75 billion rupees was announced, and 26 billion out of that bond issue has been allocated to this company that is disputed in the first one transaction, Perpetual Treasuries, the company belonging to the son-in-law of the governor. And the strange thing that has been discussed on this about that bond issue is, this has happened on the 29th of March, and the settlement date for the bonds that were taken by the primary dealers was 1st April 2016. The central bank unprecedentedly, hitherto not done, they kept the computer systems open till 9:30 in the night on the 1st of April for the settlement to be effected by this company.
Mr. Tennakon, you have to take responsibility for the statement.
Yeah, but this is what is told, but what is reported. This is what is
everyone knows this.
Everyone knows about it. In fact, I mean, if it is wrong, they can find out and give the truth. The truth has never come out. Then, the settlement actually was done on the 4th of April because 2nd and 3rd happened to be Saturday and Sunday. 4th was the next working day. and we are told that settlement too was made by borrowing from the central bank and then paying that money. You know, you call this unethical, immoral arbitrage. Arbitrage is a good translation, it's not a bad thing. But in this instance, they have borrowed money from the central bank at 8% on repo and paid for a bond which is costing 14%.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tennakon. Before moving on to Mr. Govindashri, Ms. Jayaratna, you brought in the workings of this on the Satna political program that was aired on Saturday, or special on the bond scam. Can you enlighten our viewers the loss that the government incurred as a result of this?
Yeah.
The second bond.
Before you come on the second bond to take the losses, I'd like to just give you the facts.
Yes.
And then come to that particular one. There were two bond issues, one on 29th and one on the 31st. Again, we have not received the formal, as I said in the Satana program, in the 27th February issue, we received a fax with the entire documentation from the governor's telephone. Fax.
It's official fax.
Official fax. It would have been done by the governor, but I'm sure it was sent.
And
but
also from the parliamentary committee report.
Yeah, I got it from the earlier lot
Yes.
to go to court. Then this time we are working on leaked information. We don't have a formal thing. Based on the leaked information, we believe that of this issue that was made on the 29th, the primary dealer in question got 26 billion, as he said. And important thing is EPF got only 2.5.
Who is this primary dealer, Mr. Jayaratna?
Perpetual treasuries. Okay. On the 31st, EPF did not bid at all, and they didn't get anything. And they put 3 bids but didn't get anything. And Perpetual treasuries put 20 bids and got 15.6 billion. So what we are saying is that if on the secondary market, EPF has been going to the secondary market, ETF or insurance corporation, only people who could not have gone to the primary market should only be going. EPF has a right to go and bid. Now, having not bidded, when they buy at a higher price than they have bidded, maybe, but making a benefit to the man who went to the market, and because EPF does not bid, the other party gets the bids. And he keeps, say, 14.7%, let us say, was 13.7, let us say, or 14.7 in some cases, that the perpetual treasuries got. If they kept a 1% margin and sold those bonds back to EPF, on that basis, we are assuming EPF or ETF or to insurance corporation, any one of the state, NSB or Bank of Ceylon or anybody like that, if they sold, just 1% amounts to 2.7 billion.
Thank you very much.
The important thing is,
yes,
77% in one case, 50% in the other case. The different years, the perpetual treasuries amount allocated was 14 years, 50%, 12 years, 70%. So large majority goes to a bidder, whilst the largest investor is silent.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jayaratna. The loss stands at a colossal 2.7 billion.
If that is only if we kept a margin of 1%.
1%. A margin of 1%, the loss amounts to 2.7 billion rupees on the second bond scam that took place on the 29th of March.
Just to add one
I
thing,
now move my attention to Mr. Keith Tennakon. Mr. Tennakon, I'm now going to pose a question to you, so the floor is yours.
Yes, as Mr. Rusripal very correctly said, the Bribery and Corruption Commission recorded these statements from the central bank employees, and we were very closely monitoring how it happens, and we thought, as the Bribery and Corruption Commission was flying very high those days, there must be a very transparent, maybe very informative report will come out on that particular investigation, which is not happened, and no one knew what is the exact reason why still that reputed organization is keeping that record under the carpet. And moreover, actually the anti-corruption front make a complaint to the president about the second bond issue on April 5th. And with the experience what we had, the bitter experience what we had with the first bond issue, we were so sure that the president is not, if the president is not getting involved, the Prime Minister is definitely not getting involved, as he has not shown any integrity on this issue when the election was called and the co-op reports were out, the interim reports supposed to come out and all that. If the Bribery and Corruption Commission is not doing anything, hiding the information, and we know how the Attorney General's department play the game behind that. So the only open options to organization, the people's organization, is writing to the president, of course, and we have seen that Mr. Jayaratne has done the same, and we were looking for the big picture, just not on the bond issue. We were talking about the transparency, how to put this thing in a proper way, ensure the professionalism, ensuring the national interest beyond anything else in this case. But it's very unfortunate that when all the other civil society organizations, individuals came out and exposed this in a very massive way during the last 6 weeks, nothing has happened. And Chandra is very lucky, at least he got 2-3 letters replied. In our case, we only got 1 letter reply, over 1 dozen letters were right to these people. The issue,
the Prime Minister may not be taking civil society organizations seriously.
There were some selected civil society organizations he is taking very seriously at the moment, but we are not one of their very favorite, it seems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirti Tennakoon. I now move my attention to
before elections.
I now
during the elections, yes, it's very serious.
I now move my attention to Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Jayaratne, you spoke of 2 individuals. You said you have high regards for Mr. Parskalingam as well as Mr. Chandra Jayaratne. Am I right? However, on the 26th of February 2015, you had the chairman of the United National Party, Malik Samal Wickrama, sitting with Minister Kabir Hashim, Minister Ravi Karunayaka, Deputy Treasury Secretary, as well as the Governor of the Central Bank. Why was the chairman of the United National Party attending the bond meeting? Was he trying to gather money for the UNP, or was he trying to gather money for the country? Why was he there?
I don't know. It is not a usual thing. Even the governor's presence at the auctions is not a usual. It is an unusual happening. All these are unusual happenings which goes to develop certain perceptions. And I don't like to
Is it just the tip of the iceberg? Is there a bigger drama or a bigger play?
I would like to say the bigger drama is bigger. I cannot understand why they had to do it. A second scam of the nature that we have seen, which is much higher. Of course, this time more than one party has been at it, shared information probably. Why they had to do it just a few weeks before the reappointment date? So I'm wondering whether this is arrogance or belief in themselves that they are all above the law, none of us can do anything. And what we say, nobody should question. As much as the auction system, as I said earlier, was changed, there are other methods of doing it. We could have taken the weighted average and offered at that, as happens in other countries. There are other options. Exactly. The governor was talking about other options in his own statement when you started today. Why didn't he do the other options that day if he was at he had been thinking about it? Not only that, there is a lot of other issues that seem to come up. Let's take these unsolicited proposals which this government said when in opposition that should not be done. If it is done, there is a World Bank recommended practice. They are not doing that. They are doing other things. They are going into country deals with no competition, no offers, no transparency. Now, Megapolis has today announced certain things are going to move forward. Now, question is, professionals must not only do the tender, they must make the correct decision. I'll give you just one example. If are you going to develop the railway on the main track as versus bus, or in the Colombo Megapolis, they seem to be preferring to go the light railway option versus a rapid bus option. Now, without these being debated, what is best? We expected professionals to do that. So I think that, and my biggest worry, again I repeat, is the exchange control being taken away and anybody capital account being opened. Now, why is there no debate on this? The country has hardly any extra reserves. Investors are not coming, despite inviting black money to come into this country by the finance minister. I think it is arrogance of leadership who don't care about anybody's voice other than theirs.
How much of
Faraz, you need to hold on for the moment. I need to speak to Mr. Gomin Dayasri. But before that, before moving on to Mr. Dayasri, Ms. Jayaratna, is this a breakdown in good governance?
It is not breakdown, it is overturning the prism of good governance the other way about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jayaratna. I now move my attention to Mr. Gomin Dayasri. Attorney at law, you said something very interesting, Mr. Dayasri, in your second round. You said, Mama Tamai Loka, that is what the Prime Minister thinks. Loosely translated into English, it says, I am the boss. Is he really the boss? Isn't there anyone above him? The time starts now.
Well, I think he wants to think he's the boss. But if you look at the constitution, whatever dismantling of the presidency is concerned, it has not been dismantled. The president holds almost all the executive powers except maybe the immunity as far as law is concerned. So there's no question about that. The real power is with the president. But here is a president not exercising the power that he has, because he is trying to have a co-relationship with the Prime Minister, because let's face it, the president didn't win the election because of his popularity. He won the election primarily because of the votes that the UNP was able to pick. And the UNP was too afraid, or the Prime Minister was too afraid to put himself as the candidate. And I don't think there's any living democracy in this world, Shamir, where the head of the party has twice, over a period of 12 years, not offered himself as the candidate. I mean, he must be suffering from some kind of inferiority complex if he thinks that he is not sufficiently popular to be the candidate of the most popular party of the two main parties. So he suffers from that kind of infirmity, and now he is in control. He knows that Sirisena came because of him. So I feel that this whole exercise is something larger. He wants to
What
show.
must the president do if this is the case?
President has given advice, very timely advice, lot of wisdom in that, but he sees that the Prime Minister, through his minister, Kirialla, has said, I'm going to reappoint him, and then he keeps mum. So this is the trouble.
Ms. Dayasri, we have seen advice, we have seen committees being appointed, but this is not what the people want. They want action.
Precisely. They want action, and they want proper action. That is why they threw the last count out. And they see virtually the same thing happening here, because you are appointing cahoots, sycophants, and they, I mean, my friend mentions Ratwat and Pascal Lingam. I mean, there was a time when they said the last election was lost because of Mr. Ratwat not giving any jobs, and Pascal Lingam, well, lots of more things were said. So this is the trouble. Where is the youth? Where are the young people? Where are the technocrats? We are all living, it's our generation who has disgraced the country. It is the next generation who won the war who brought glory to this country. Today, NGOs, ourselves, the media is much freer because there is no terrorism in this country. And that credit goes to Mahinda Rajapaksa. He completely taught there is eternal gratitude of the people. He overestimated the element of gratitude.
He also taught the government ministers how to rob, isn't he? Didn't he do that?
I mean, he taught a lot of things to people, but ministers, I believe, robbed. But it is only some ministers who have been taken into questioning. There's a whole lot of ministers who are holding positions in the government who also had a very bad record, who is not been questioned at all. So there again, whatever people might say, people are happy investigations are going, but that must be there's even-handed. Here there is discrimination.
Thank you very
Certain
much.
selected people are being targeted.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dashri, for your thoughts in the third round. I open the floor for questions from our journalists, but before that, a quick question to Ms. Jayaratna, and then for us, it's all yours. Ms. Jayaratna, the second bond issue, I want to drag your attention to the second bond issue, 29th of March. The EPF can directly bid, am I right? Can that happen in the bond market? It can. However, apparently, the rumor has it that the EPF representative had fallen asleep on that day. How far is this?
Rumors say not only one day he fell asleep, one day he was sick and therefore he couldn't put any bids in. These are rumors, but let's forget the rumors. The figures speak for themselves. If the figures are right,
no bids whatsoever on the 29th of March.
on which he gets on the 31st.
31st.
On the other, it's only 2.5 versus 26 billion from the other.
But he buys subsequently.
Well, we have a very important question, I think, to answer that. Secondary market is not being reviewed by anybody in this country, and that is an important factor.
Mr. Rusiripala Tennakoon, you were a former chairman of Bank of Ceylon. I want to draw on this matter of bidding on bonds. I want to draw your attention to the first bond issue, where there was a lot more information forthcoming, and we discovered that Bank of Ceylon, as a proxy, had put forward a vast sum of money to purchase bonds for perpetual treasuries. In your experience, being a former chairman of BOC, is this normal practice? Has BOC done this before?
Definitely not normal, and this is the first instance known in these bond transactions where a primary dealer is bidding on behalf of another primary dealer, and the sum is not a small sum. The sum that they bid for is 13 billion when the announced bid amount was 1 billion, and that was done by asking for a 10-minute extension of time when the governor, the present governor, was on the floor, at the auction floor himself, personally available, and that time was extended.
Mr. Tennakoon, this committee that was appointed by the Prime Minister had recommended, the committee on which Mr. the three UNP lawyers and Mr. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor, was serving as an advisor, had recommended that Bank of Ceylon's be investigated, that inquiries be made into the Treasury Department to see what had happened here. What became of these investigations?
No. This committee that was appointed by the Prime Minister, as announced in the Parliament, also recommended, although it was not in our terms of reference, although it was not mandatory for us to make that observation, we are compelled to make the observation that the whole matter of this bond issue should be the subject of a further investigation, because they have seen so many malpractices which they could not hide, even though they were not asked to comment on those due to the limited terms of reference. So it is true that they said something about the Bank of Ceylon, but don't forget, they also said about the entire bond issue, the whole thing must be examined, investigated further.
Mr. Dashri, I want to ask you this question. You were talking about the Prime Minister. One question.
For a second. No, we'll go to Faraz and then come to you. Yes.
Mr. Jayaratna, actually this question is to Mr. Rusiripala, but I want to say, Mr. Jayaratna described these actions as One of the words he used was arrogance. Question to you, Mr. Rusripala, is how much of it is arrogance and how much is of this is an aura of invincibility when it comes to the raping of the central bank?
I think I partly agree with Chandra, because when he says that it is arrogance, there is some ego in this, some ego factor which we cannot, fathom in this case, coming from a very high position, holder of a high position in this country. In a situation like this, if he cannot yield to the pressure of those people who brought them to power, not to us, the civil society people whom they considered as very good partners for them to have got elected, supported for them to have got elected, are being totally ignored currently. I want to tell one thing. If they are continued to be ignored in this instance too, by some kind of a reappointment or some gimmick to bring this person back, mark my words, the economists of this country will bring out a report about the performance of this governor as in his position as the governor of the central bank, and what calamity he has brought about to the economy of this country during his tenure of office as the governor of the country, central bank.
Mr. Dasri, you're a respected senior lawyer, very senior lawyer. You were talking about the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister trying to appoint the governor of the central bank, the Prime Minister trying to do this, the Prime Minister trying to do that. But according to the law, who is the appointing authority?
The appointing authority, I believe, is the President.
So, can the President neglect that responsibility and hand it over to the Prime Minister?
Precisely, that is why I kept saying that there this kind of in this kind of marriage, it's a question of husband and wife trying to both overcome existing problems by working jointly, because this is a very sad state of affairs.
But Mr. Dasri, my question is, if you keep to the letter of the law,
you cannot.
As Mr. Rusripala Tennakoon explained, it's the President on the advice of the Finance Minister.
The recommendation.
On the recommendation of the Finance Minister. The Prime Minister is not the Finance Minister either.
And
the Prime Minister's name is not even mentioned in the law in this matter.
And it's very convenient, Nazim, very good question, because the President has already given recommendation that he should not be appointed. So you may remember that. And still the appointment is going to be made. Is that legal? Is that legitimate? Now the question is, Mr. Governor.
But the appointment cannot be made without the President's signature.
Definitely, it cannot be made.
Are you saying that the President, who has recommended that he not be appointed, will sign the appointment letter?
Well, I don't know whether he'll sign it, but he has said he doesn't like it. But now the Prime Minister says that he's going to be appointed. You see, this is a comedy of errors.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a joke, because Prime Minister and the President cannot share power in this way. There is a definite executive presidency and he has power vested. He has to exercise it.
If he said, I am going to make a recommendation, it would have been okay.
He doesn't say, and then we have this Constitutional Council, a comedy. I mean, any name that goes from the President, they sanction it. Tell me how many have they refused? And then they say...
But they do get multiple recommendations, and they have to consider the multiple recommendations and then give their recommendations.
But what did they say? Don't send multiple recommendations. You have to recommend one person. Now, that is not democracy. More names that are thrown gives a bigger discretion to the Constitutional Council. But they go on to say, send us, you can only send one name, we either appoint or reject. That is not fair. I think the President is doing a much better thing. He is sending number of names and ask them to consider. That is more democratic. Yeah. Now look at this letter that Chandra got from the President, from the Governor. In that letter he quotes that the court did not grant leave to appeal because of the fact that it did not come within the purview of the court. So there is no question of saying that he has been exonerated. Nothing of that. I mean, this is juvenile. I mean, this is good for a kindergarten kind of reply. I mean, any man of average intelligence will realize that the court did not examine the case.
Mr.
Because the
Jayaratne,
mistake made, I'll tell you this, I have to tell this, very often, I am not saying Chandra and this group did it, but very often people rush to court, which is a very stupid thing, because you can go to court on definite legitimate grievances. Not any grievance that you, not on matters of academic interest, you can't. So my advice to all these do-gooders, be careful when you go to court, don't go, because end of the day what happens? Mahendran tries to get an advantage of a court decision because the public doesn't know all these things.
Mr. Jayaratna, I had a question for you, but I'll let you respond to Mr. Dayasri before I get to my question.
Well, I do agree with him. We went what we thought was the best interest at that stage, and in retrospect, it would have been better not to have gone to court, the way court looked at it, because the court sessions were very technical, trying to look at through a very narrow window without giving that opportunity at a later stage.
Chandra, they took the best advantage of that position. I saw in the TV show where the finance minister himself was answering questions from you. He cited 3 instances where this person was exonerated according to him. Number 1, the COPE committee, the parliamentary committee. Number 2, the COPE committee. Then thirdly, the courts, high courts, the Supreme Court in this country. They are taking very strong defense, to defend this person, saying to the public, entire contrary to the view that you are holding and the others are holding. Well, he has been cleared. He has not been cleared in any of these instances. We must declare that publicly and openly, that he has not been cleared in any of these instances.
But Nikhil highlighted this to the finance minister as well,
just 1 minute,
Mr.
please.
Dayasri and Mr.
Now,
Nicole.
my friend makes a very good point that this had been examined in the Greek bonds. But what happened there? Did they find them guilty?
No.
End of the day, I'm telling you, be very cautious. I'm telling the public, I'm giving a message because I have done so many public interest cases. First thing, time your case. Go when the going is good. 2, don't rush to court, because court will, in both cases, the Greek bonds and the present bonds, one day examined, the other day didn't. But what happened? Exoneration. So you go to get a decision which is palpably wrong, and court has their ways out.
Mr. Jayaratna, I want to bring it back to the matter of the position of the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. We highlighted earlier in the show that we are lacking a mechanism to ensure that even the person who is appointed as the next governor is a person of a certain caliber, of quality, of integrity, most importantly. You're a member of the Friday Forum movement as well. Where do you stand on this issue with good governance?
I think I'd like to go back to the paper, sessional paper that created the central bank, which is Exeter's sessional paper, where he says, accordingly, the governor should be a man of recognized and outstanding competence in an understanding of the economic and financial problems of Ceylon then, and of unquestioned integrity and responsibility. I don't think you need anybody to get up and stand. Everybody has been questioning. So if it is a person with unquestioned integrity, as Exeter wanted to be the governor, this gentleman is not, his integrity has been questioned today, yesterday, from the beginning of including whether he has the legal right to as appointed has been asked. So I don't think anybody in civil society needs speak.
Mr. Tenakon, Mr. Rusiripala Tenakon, yesterday we, as I said earlier, the Puruvasi Balaya movement co-convener came forward and said that the Prime Minister did agree to not appoint the governor until the investigations into him conclude. Is this a right move? Is this directional? Is it positive?
It's total deviation of what we saw as a development in this instance. The civil societies, as Kirti said a while ago, they all went met the President and the Prime Minister together in the President's office, and they elaborated everything in detail, including most of the time was devoted on the bond issue or the central bank issue, and the answer was the Prime Minister walked away. Half of the meeting he walked away, stating that President and himself will take a decision and inform. Following day, some of these civil society organizations,
Only 5.
they go and have a private meeting with the Prime Minister, and they come out and make this statement.
Mr. Keith Tenukon, are you also of the same opinion that this was not the right move?
It was not the right move.
This is not then what do you want?
I mean the proper consultation is one of the way. I mean, what the President, the Prime Minister told with the meeting when the President was down there, when all the other 17 people were down there, was that we will have a consultation.
No, my question is not been answered. My question is, if you don't want the governor of the central bank to be reappointed, and if the Prime Minister has agreed to not do that, and if you say that it is not the right move, what is it that you want?
Definitely, I mean, this is not an issue of whether Arjun Mahendran is getting the position or not. He try one way or the other, the Prime Minister, it seems like, try to keep him on the post. It could be doing by different ways. There are so many ways it could be done. Number one, we have seen that the most senior person who was down there as the deputy governor down there was not appointed as the acting governor when the first treasury bond case were highlighted, and when he flew out of the country to have an investigation. And the man who was center, the deputy governor who was center of the bond scam, is trying to get a manipulation out of this whole process, and everyone knows about this. And now the same issue was highlighted in a different manner to get that deputy governor into this position.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts in the fourth round as well. But before moving to a short commercial break, a quick question to Mr. Chandra Jayaratna. Mr. Jayaratna spoke about the capital account being open. The governor of the central bank, when announcing this to the private sector, he said that, I don't want the press to pick this up and open a can of worms. How autocratic is that decision made by the governor of the central bank, Arjun Mahendran?
If a similar statement made by the Prime Minister opened an auction which has caused all this, where it's important for me to end by showing that the press release of the central bank itself is proof that there is a problem. The press release of 2nd of June, where they say this is not me, this is central bank's official press release. Now if anybody wants more proof that there is a problem, it's here. This is the recommendation for the future. The relevant management team to hold pre-bid meetings with all primary dealers to share information on market developments and to have a clearly defined auction calendar. So it's an acceptance that such a thing didn't happen up to now. Number two, to examine international best practices with respect to volumes advertised and accepted at public auctions, and propose to the board as to how the central bank should adopt such practices. This is what we went asking the Supreme Court to do, was exactly this, which they didn't do. Employees Provident Fund to actively participate at Prime Minister. So it's an acceptance that they have not actively participated. And finally, the lawyers committee report said two things. Why has that not been, which was given to the Prime Minister and accepted by him? Two things. Look at what happened in Bank of Ceylon. Look at conflicts of interest and related party transactions. It was outside our mandate. We didn't look at it. So there is no need for us to debate on anything else. Central bank has accepted the scam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratna. We now go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, it's the final round. Where is this resplendent island heading? Welcome back to Face the Nation. Many might wonder The topic that we're discussing today is a little bit technical. However, what the people should understand is the fact that there has been a bond scam in Sri Lanka. Economic governance in the country is going haywire. There is no proper direction. There is inconsistent policy. Foreign direct investors would shy away from investing in the country when there is an issue at the central bank itself. I now move my attention in the final round to Mr. Keith Thenakone, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Thenakone, what do you expect as a member of the civil society from the government in terms of fighting corruption?
We are experiencing a central bank which makes continuous losses, and in the other hand we are experiencing a bribery and corruption fight. Anti-corruption drive has grounded, and we are experiencing more and more issues related to the good governance on daily basis, and this is not the right way the country, if we are looking for some productive, one's constructive manner to deal with when it comes to the next 3-4 generations. The very basics in this caliber has not taken place. We had a very big hope when it comes to the anti-corruption drive was established, and when the anti-corruption issues were taken and the proper some sort of investigations were taken place, and we have seen that so far more than 45 files were held up with the Attorney General's Department. No further steps were taken to fight with the anti-corruption issues, and we know that the inside information was shared from the corruption related investigations with the other parties. In this circumstance, we are coming into the issue that this government is making the same mistakes, same practices which the previous government has experienced, but they have done in a very absolute manipulated way. And now the issue here is that all these corruption issues, malpractices are going to treat the same manner which the previous president Rajapaksa treated in those cases. If that's the case, is that the government what we are looking for? This president has allowed the Prime Minister to handle the economic part of the country, which do not move to the needed, much needed reforms, much needed attention, and in the other hand much needed contribution from the civil society and the expert. It lacks the professionalism, and this is all about the big
Thank
case.
you very much, Mr. Keith Thenakone. I now move my attention to Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Jayaratne, it is now clear that the EPF is buying bonds from the secondary market. Why not investigate the wealth management institutes, organizations? Why not have a forensic investigation on these institutes and see who exactly is pumping these bonds to the market?
Yeah, that was one of the requests that we made, was to have a secondary market review by the SEC. SEC has found a small line in their act why they cannot do it. I think they should correct that and appoint some independent party to look at the secondary market transactions. Let us now at least hope, I don't know what the letter I received today from the Commissioner of Labour to look at the investments, whether he has the competence to do it or whether he will get the best experts to review it, we don't know. But it is an essential factor, because secondary market persons are part of, it's like investments. And when we know that a large primary dealer has uncollateralized repos believed to be about 10 billion, that in itself should have not, you asking why it's not done, central bank should have, without trying to hide it in their balance sheet, should have come clean and done what you're saying.
What is the way forward, Mr. Jayaratne?
Well,
the
way forward to me is being open debate on key issues. Now there is a bill called the Development Special Provisions Bill. We have got a copy, you have got a copy, which shows that the Prime Minister's office is going to run almost every ministry in this country. giving directions, what is going to be done, the plans being prepared. Megapolis has come, no transparency. Exchange control is coming, no transparency. Let us, the way forward is there should be on critical policy issues, Parliament must debate, there must be white papers, public must participate, and media must be given a chance to arrange things like this before they are put into practice.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Now I move my attention now to Mr. Govind Dayasri, senior attorney at law. Mr. Dayasri, let's say that the governor's term, hypothetically, the governor's term is not extended and he goes overseas to Singapore once again. What happens to the losses that has been incurred by the people? Can we try the governor of the central bank, who would be the former governor of the central bank then, for the losses that were committed to the people of Sri Lanka? Can that be done?
It can be done, because if it's prima facie, there's a case against him, I think his passport should be impounded. He should not be allowed to go. But if he does go, we can still file action, because if he's in Singapore, we can serve summons and we may have an ex parte trial. But to me, those are, Mr. Arjun Mahendra is just a symbol. I think today in our society there's not one Arjuna Mahendra, there are about 20, 30 of them, all playing games. Second point I want to make is we are now heading to a nosedive. We are nosediving, and I think even if the black box is found, it will be overloaded. The third thing is, I think the Prime Minister is very confident because he feels another issue will come and this will be swept under the carpet. And finally, what I feel is that what you have heard today from my friends here, that is Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, very eminent. I know he did a tremendous service during the last government of being critical. Mr. Tendakon, who did fair and fair elections, Mr. Susripal, who has been always articulate. Today one can see a definite trend. They are totally dissatisfied with this concept of so-called good governance. They think, they see it's a farce. They see what the Prime Minister is doing. I feel that this is the time that alarm bells should ring in the President's house. He says, don't appoint him. He is the appointing authority. What would he do next? Let's watch, and that will tell another story.
Thank you very much, Mr. Govind Dayasri. The final speaker of this evening is Mr. Rusripala Tennakon, former banker, as well as the former chairman of the Bank of Ceylon. Mr. Tennakon, where are we heading? Where is Sri Lanka heading?
I think let me tread on a little on what Chaturanga raised. You know, that's a very, I think that went unanswered properly. The statement made regarding the fixing of an inquiry and sending the governor on leave. Shall we go back to trace back to the history a little? First, the appointment of a parliamentary committee, outsiders appointed by the Prime Minister, stated in the Parliament, giving a entirely different set of terms of reference. Secondly, a COPE committee concluding an inquiry, about to sign a report, Parliament dissolved. And now, when the issue comes for the termination of the period of the governor, which automatically happens on the 30th of this month, they are talking about acting appointments, extensions, granting leave, and instigating inquiries. So you can see what this is. This game started in the way that we saw, and it is going to end up in the same way. As rightly stated by some of my colleagues here, you know, we have to wait and see what finally the President of this country will do. I am sure, my personal perception is that he has taken a careful note of what is happening in the country. He will have to have his ears open, eyes open to the views, opinions expressed in this country in good interest, good faith, for the sake of the country, and he will take a final decision whether it is recommended or otherwise. Country is of course facing towards disaster. The performance of the economy has been very bad. Today the interest rates are so high, no one to invest. Foreign investors have taken most of their investments that were in this country for a long time. They have taken it and bagged and gone. This is the economy. So the country, the whole world knows the state of the economy, and therefore our future is a bit doomed than we imagine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusipat Tendukon. Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, for joining us this evening. Mr. Govind Dashri, senior attorney at law. Mr. Keir Tendukon, executive director of CAFE, as well as Mr. Rusipat Tendukon, senior bank, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Nadeem. Thank you very much, Faraz. Thank you very much, Chaturanga. We are going on a nosedive. Even if the black box is found, it will be overloaded. The country's economy is in a disastrous situation. We need to have friends, but what is important at the end of the day is conscience. Good governance, is it really there? A big question mark now in the hearts and minds of the people. Where is transparency? Where is corruption heading? Where is good governance in this country? I leave you tonight with a quote. We can never be gods after all, but we can become something less than human with frightening ease. Take care and good night.